Hello, my name is Steve Chancellor. I'm with Second Look Training and Forensic Consulting, and welcome to another edition of A Few Minutes with Detectives. Today we want to talk about an interesting topic and very well known in the law enforcement community, and that's what we call the CSI Effect. And what is the CSI Effect? Well, basically, it's the effect of the various law enforcement programs that we see on TV today that started with the CSI from the various cities and then to the forensic files and to the new detectives to JAG to NCIS. Even today we have the investigative channel where all these programs can be found. Well, what that did is that kind of educated the American public to the whole concept of forensic science, and particularly in crime scene examinations, which is all great except when they went to court and they were the jury members. The problem was they had an unrealistic expectation of forensic science, in that on TV everything of course is pristine, everything is perfect. You know, you collect a DNA sample the first 5 minutes of the program, and by the second commercial you have the results. And not only do you have the results, but many times you have the picture of the suspect, which is really something that I think most detectives would like to have. Of course, that's just on TV, and it's unrealistic. It doesn't happen that way. But the problem is that many of the things that they were seeing on TV, they adopted, and that's what they thought that they were going to find when they come into court. The problem was many times because they had this expectation when it didn't, when the results were not exactly like they expected because of TV, they began to doubt either the prosecution or they doubted the examiners. And what happened is that the prosecutors began to have a very difficult time in obtaining convictions in some of their cases, particularly those cases that didn't have a lot of forensic evidence. And in reality, we don't always find forensic evidence in some crime scenes. It's simply not there. This has resulted in a couple of different things. We've had to respond to this phenomenon in a couple of different ways. One of the ways that we responded, as an example, the last time that I testified in court as a crime scene analyst, I was actually asked to come in to be able to explain to the jury why I wasn't able to find latent prints at the crime scene. So part of my testimony was really giving a 5 to 10 minute class to the jury explaining the dynamics of latent prints. That they're on, we find them by accident, or they're left by chance or by accident, and that just because you touch something doesn't mean you've left your prints. It's you may have and you may not have. And it's the same thing. I use an example of the jury box, that I could dust the rail in front of the jury box. It's very possibly I could find their latent prints if they touched it. I'm just as likely to have found latent prints from someone from 3 juries before. Okay. Because there's just no way to really say that if a suspect was at the scene that I'm going to find that type of evidence. It also affected prosecutors in another way. I'll use another example. I assisted in a crime scene examination of a homicide that took place in a business. In this particular case, we had a disgruntled employee that went into his supervisor's office with a pistol and shot him 6 times within the office. He then left. Now, we had 10 people on the outside that knew him, that saw him go into the boss's office, that saw him, heard the gunshots and saw him when he left. And about an hour and a half later, he actually turned himself into the local police station. So we had a pretty good case. We didn't, we processed the scene as they normally did, no problems. The next morning, however, I get a call from the detectives that they're having a hard time with the local prosecutor. The problem was that the prosecutor was insisting that they send some of the blood that we had collected from the blood spatter on on a bookcase and some of the pools of blood that were inside, sent it to the laboratory for DNA analysis. So I called the prosecutor, and I kind of went over all the evidence that were found, and that I didn't think that sending this stuff to the lab was going to be probative. There was not going to be anything that we were going to get from the laboratory that we didn't know already, particularly since we know there was only 2 people in the office at the time and that nobody else was injured, only the deceased. So sending the blood to the lab really had no value. That I'm not even sure he could use it in court. The problem was he insisted that we do it only because he had been taught that if you have blood evidence, you must have DNA analysis. So does that run into some problems? Yeah, of course. Because remember, if we're sending evidence to the lab on something that we already know, all we're doing is we're jamming it up. Because while they're working on our analysis, right, for this blood that we don't really need, somebody else is waiting in line who really does need that evidence. Plus, it's very expensive to have this type of analysis completed. So this is how the CSI Effect has kind of really affected the prosecutors and the law enforcement community. One of the things that we say in our crime scene classes, in our general investigative classes, is that the extreme value of collecting the forensic evidence, because the jury members are going to expect it. So we have to take the time and really look hard and send all your evidence to the lab if you've collected it. Okay, and that's how you kind of fight that. The other persons who actually have a hard time with the CSI Effect, come to find out, were the defense, because again the jurors had an over-reliance on forensics, that they tended to believe the forensics completely. So they were having a difficult time trying to convince the jury that maybe some of these forensics examinations weren't as accurate as they believed. So this is really a problem. We can overcome the problem by simply do a good crime scene search, collect your forensic evidence. When you find it, get it to the laboratory, okay? Because again, your jury's going to expect it. Now, one of the other things that we also suggest along this same line is when we document our crime scene, normally we document it now with digital photography. Now we encourage the detectives and the CSIs to also videotape the crime scene as another form of documentation. And the reason being is because we are basically a video society now. We live on YouTube, we live on the TV set, we can video now on our own phones. So we're very familiar with that. So what you're doing by videotaping the crime scene is you're actually putting your evidence on a medium that everybody in America understands, okay? And they're going to be watching it just like they would a TV show, and it's going to fit right in with their expectations. And that's one of the ways we kind of overcome this CSI Effect. Okay, I hope that clarifies it. It's a pretty interesting subject to us. It is an issue that we have to deal with, but it's not a problem if you know what to do. So to all the crime scene guys and detectives, prosecutors, I hope you enjoyed it. I'd encourage you to please go take a look at our website, www.secondlooktraining.com. See if there's any training courses that you'd like to attend, or you think your agency might want to host. We'd love to come out to see you, give you some outstanding law enforcement training. For everybody else, I want to say thank you very much. Ask you to please subscribe, so we'll notify you as soon as another video comes out. And we'd like to see you again in another edition of A Few Minutes with Detectives. Thanks.